Hi everyone, my name is Herkif and welcome back to my incredibly stupid hardcore world where I'm only allowed to use wooden tools and leather armor. In our last episode, we built a couple farms to help aid our slavery-fueled lifestyle. However, what I've noticed is that a lot of farms in general seem to require quite a lot of obsidian, which is very inconvenient, as we are constantly running out of it like the absolute loser of a human being that my mum thinks I am. So in today's episode, I've decided to prove her wrong and thought it might be a good idea to put an end to our rather excessive and annoying level of poverty by building a fully automatic obsidian farm. And rather conveniently, I managed to find a farm that used nether portals instead of the spawn platform in the end, which was rather nice as I would prefer to not vandalize the end or the portal leading to it, more than we already have. So I got to collecting all of the resources that we would need. And just like all other obsidian farms, this one required withers to continuously break the obsidian, which wasn't an issue in the slightest, as we already had a wither extermination device, and after having carried out a quick genocide, I got to work building the farm. But after what felt like 2 hours, 8 minutes and 13 seconds, we had finally finished the farm, meaning that we had officially proved my mother wrong. However, as I started using the farm, I realized that it was using TNT duping, which is something that I'm not very fond of as duping is lame. And in pure desperation, I started troubleshooting the farm, trying to find another way of making the farm work without TNT duping. However, I was rather quickly taught that my IQ was significantly too low for that. So I decided to go for another design, meaning that I had spent what felt like 2 hours, 8 minutes and 13 seconds accomplishing absolutely nothing, which is, rather annoyingly, not particularly surprising. But now we were left with the situation where there are 2 withers in somewhat close proximity to my base, as I was significantly too lazy to fly particularly far before building it. Though since I am a less than responsible adult, I decided to simply abandon the farm and leave the 2 withers as I couldn't be bothered to deal with them. But anyways, I went online once more and found a design by good old ENX04, meaning that we were back on track. This farm apparently used a snow golem to make the wither break the obsidian of the spawn platform in the end, meaning that it didn't rely on TNT duping, which was very epic. So I started building our second obsidian farm for this episode. And this one only took about half the time the last one did, which gave me enough dopamine to not want to die for a split second. But since this design relied on the end spawn, there were endermen all over the farm, and if one of the previously mentioned endermen would get hit by one of the wither skulls, the farm would probably break, leading to my rather swift and imminent death. So I flew off to the nether and grabbed myself a bunch of magma, which I then placed all over the farm in hopes of keeping the pesky endermen away. I then went on to spend an hour AFK to test the farm, and once our hour of AFKing was up, I spawned in an iron golem to take out the wither to keep my cheeks unclapped. It seemed to have some problems making his way over to the wither at first, but eventually managed to slap the wither out of existence. And during our 1 hour test, the farm had managed to fill the entire storage, meaning that we had 9 double chests or 18 shulkers full of obsidian, which would hopefully last us a good while. So with that, I flew back home once again and put all of my stuff away. I then remembered that I had completely forgotten the absolute biggest and most exciting addition in the latest update. That, of course, being the new auto crafter. So I played around a bit in creative in hopes of coming up with a way to use it, and actually managed to find a pretty decent way rather quickly. However, as per usual, I forgot to record that, meaning that you'll simply have to trust me and my immaculate and groundbreaking redstone skills. The first place where I thought it would be nice to have an auto crafter was our gold farm, as crafting all of the gold nuggets into bars to then craft into blocks is rather annoying. though I rather quickly remembered that I actually have to craft the auto-crafters to use them. So I got on with our latest deforestation mission and crafted myself a full stack of auto crafters, thinking that it would hopefully last for quite a while. I then thought that I might as well refill our other redstone supplies as well, as we will always need more of them. So I tended to that as well. I then flew over to our gold farm and deployed my vast and almost frightening redstone skills to upgrade our storage. I decided to install 2 different crafters for each side, so that we would turn all our gold nuggets into gold blocks, as that would make my life significantly less annoying when I want to use our bartering farm. And completing this challenge caused my confidence and ego to skyrocket, as I was essentially a redstone god at this point. So with that fresh sense of accomplishment and euphoria, I decided to implement the crafter in our guardian farm as well. The reason why I decided to do this is because we're going to need an absolutely absurd amount of prismarine and sea lanterns in the near future, and I would rather not have to spend hours crafting all that prismarine using my obviously very precious time, as I am a very mature adult with lots of responsibilities. I'm also very handsome. But anyways, this project was going to require a bit more brain power than the single item system I had implemented for our gold farm, as there were 2 different recipes which used 2 different items. The first one being dark prismarine, which requires both prismarine shards as well as black dye, and the second one being sea lanterns, which requires both prismarine crystals and prismarine shards. And the dark prismarine was going to be even more annoying to deal with, as we would also have to turn all of our ink sacs into black dye before we could use it to craft the prismarine. So this meant that this project was going to need a higher level of intellect and problem-solving skills, which is something that I don't possess. So I decided to resort to the winning concept of copyright infringement once again, and this time I decided to plagiarize a design by Ray's Works, who is a man with a galaxy-sized brain that has come up with a bunch of different designs. So I replenished my redstone shulker once more and made my way to the storage for our guardian farm. I then proceeded to destroy said storage to make way for our absolutely pimped up storage we were about to bestow upon the universe, though I rather quickly realized that we actually already had a rather hefty amount of items in it. So I crafted a bunch of prismarine bricks using the prismarine shards and burned all of the fish and prismarine crystals, as we wouldn't need them. There are 4 different items we want our farm to produce, those being dark prismarine, prismarine bricks, prismarine blocks, as well as sea lanterns. The prismarine bricks and prismarine were going to be really simple, as we could use the exact same scuffed system I used for our gold farm. So we actually only needed to commit copyright infringement for 2 out of the 4 items, which was very nice. But I then remembered that the previous storage used 4 different hopper lines, which would mean that we would have to set up 4 different units with a total of 16 crafter setups. This made me realize that this project was significantly bigger than I had initially thought. Though it didn't stop there, our previous storage was actually severely backlogged, meaning that we would need even more hopper lines to not lose out on a bunch of items. And since the bottom of the killing area had 10 hoppers, I decided to build 1 unit per hopper, meaning we would need a total of 10 units, meaning we would need 40 auto crafter setups. So with that rather devastating revelation, I got started upgrading our storage system. My idea for this storage was to create a priority for the different items, meaning that the system would prioritize crafting 1 item at the time. And once it has filled the storage for that specific item, or if the specific item has a full backlog, it would be funneled to the next item. So the item I wanted to be at the top of the priority was dark prismarine. So that meant that the crafter for dark prismarine would be placed first for each hopper line, meaning it gets prioritized for prismarine shards. Once we have a complete backlog of shards, the system will allow the prismarine shards to pass to the next item, which would be prismarine bricks. I know, I'm essentially the president of Mensa, and after a devastatingly long time, I had figured out how I was going to implement the priority system, and built the very first unit of our storage. This meant that we had 9 more to go. And just to make matters worse, I had completely forgotten that mobs exist, which led to me being physically assaulted on numerous occasions, which was rather inconvenient. And after having spent what felt like enough time to get a bachelor's degree in theatre arts, we had finally finished all of the storage units needed for our guardian farm. This meant that we could move on to the next step, which was to connect all of the units to the killing chamber with hopper lines. And with that completed, as well as item elevators to transport the items to each hopper line, we only had a few touch-ups left, which included adding items to the item sorters as well as the initial recipe for the crafters using 2 different items. So I went AFK for a couple minutes and returned to enough items to do just that. I then got quite curious of exactly how many resources I had invested in this project, as I constantly had to go back and forth for materials whilst building the storage. I was especially curious about the number of hoppers we've used, so I decided to create a copy of our world and used World Edit to uncover that we've used a whopping 1,166 hoppers, which is over 18 stacks, but the number of repeaters and comparators we used was actually significantly lower than I expected. But that is about all the time we have for this episode, so there we have it, the 16th episode of our incredibly stupid hardcore world. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.